Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Network Podcast. I'm Andrew Benigay, one of your community managers on Assassin's Creed and your host. I am joined as always by Gabe Graziano, who is the senior comm dev on Assassin's Creed. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Awesome. And we are joined on this episode by Richard Farrese, who is both the lead writer for the Assassin's Creed brand as well as the lead writer on Assassin's Creed Rogue. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Richard.
I'm happy to be here, guys.
Awesome. So, as you've probably guessed, we're going to be talking about Assassin's Creed Rogue in this particular podcast episode. We will do our best to avoid heavy spoilers, because obviously we know some of you are looking forward to playing this a lot. But we are going to go a little bit into Assassin's Creed Rogue and various parts of the game. So actually, as we normally do, we're going to start with getting to know Richard a bit better, because I'm sure some of you, this might be the first time you're hearing about him. Maybe you follow the brand a lot and you already know about him from some previous titles. But Richard, why don't you tell us about how you got to Ubisoft and sort of like what you did before and then how you got onto AC Rogue?
So before I was at Ubisoft, I was a freelance writer for about 10 years, working on different projects, mostly short stories, comic book scripts. I worked on a novel, and I published a lot of articles and game. I'm not even sure what they're called. The RPG books.
Oh, yeah, sure. Pencil and paper role-playing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pen and paper, exactly.
So, like,
yeah,
modules and things like that?
Exactly.
Okay.
More, like entire cities, and we basically developed like the universes. Like we created the worlds, like playing God.
I think Travis was saying he did something similar too, right?
Yeah, Travis and Lucien as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Luce did that too. So yeah, for 10 years I've worked in the role-playing game industry, and then I was contacted to work on Project Legacy. I already knew the brand a little bit as a player. I was a fan of AC. I didn't know Project Legacy at the time, and I started playing the game before I met the team here at Ubisoft. And then I started working on Legacy, basically, developing different stories, different characters. And Project Legacy was really exciting because we could actually go beyond like the games and explore different eras, and that was really, really fun. And when Project Legacy was cancelled, I was pretty much assigned to the brand team to just take a look at what was going on, especially in Transmedia. So I worked on different projects until I got the mandate to work on Liberation. That was a couple of years ago. Then I came back to the brand team, again, working on different things like the comic book, keeping an eye on the novels, the encyclopedia and all that stuff. And then Rogue came about, and I, started working on Rogue, on the main story, just developing the story, the high-level stuff, until we had to go, and the project was green-lighted. And then I needed a team, so we started looking into that. So this is pretty much what I've been doing since I've been with the company.
That is quite the resume.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to stop you, but one thing that I have a question about, I feel like, is we talk about transmedia and stuff sometimes, but I don't know that we've ever really gone into what that is exactly. Like, I know we hear it a lot around the studio and stuff, but like, because technically Project Legacy is a transmedia, right?
Yes, exactly. Like anything that is not a game, especially a AAA title, is transmedia. Like Project Legacy was one of the big thing because, especially back then, I feel that Assassin's Creed was basically a series of games. With Project Legacy, it became like this entire universe. It sort of became a franchise, I felt, with Project Legacy, and with the comic books. Like it's the sort of I don't want to say the expanded universe, but it is a bit like that. Like if you think Star Wars, they have novels, they have comic books, they have these technical guides, they have everything. On this franchise, it's not, we're not pushing things as far, but we do like to explore different time periods and different stories, and this is what these projects allows us to do. they're allowed to do that. So it's pretty fun actually.
I know personally I was a big fan of Project Legacy, as were a lot of, well, pretty much all of the wiki. But it was great because, like you said, with Transmedia, it was an opportunity to explore more than just the games. There was, as you mentioned, an expanded universe out there. It was great to see how all of that linked in.
What's fun too is that with those projects, we could actually create links between the various games, either using the present day layer of the I don't have to explain the franchise. I imagine like how it works, but basically we could link different initiatives, and that was pretty fun.
So, having now expanded on what you've been doing, let's get on to Assassin's Creed Rogue in particular. So give us a pitch. Tell us a little bit about Assassin's Creed Rogue for those who this might be their first, their first contact with Rogue. Maybe they've not been paying attention, or maybe they've been away under a rock somewhere, and this is how they're going to find out of Assassin's Creed Rogue. So tell us about Assassin's Creed Rogue.
So Rogue is actually the story of Shay Patrick Cormac, an assassin who decides to turn his back on the Brotherhood for very reasonable reasons, and he becomes actually a Templar. And what Rogue is, it's actually a very complex story, but basically when you play Rogue, you start as an assassin. You follow Shay as he gets instructions. You start as a young assassin, you learn the trade, then you're sent on a mission. Something goes very wrong, and when you come back to the colonies and you confront Achilles, you just can't make sense of what happened, and you decide to take it upon yourself to make sure that the assassins never do what you were sent to do, and this is when you actually betray the Brotherhood, and for a while you're just a rogue, but after I guess several hours of gameplay, you sort of slowly side with the Templars, and you realize that their cause is actually better. I've always been a fan of the Templars personally, so it's hard for me to judge. But in Shay's mind, definitely the Templars have the right methods, and for Shay, the Templars are all about bringing order to the colonies, whereas the assassins are dangerous in his mind. So in Rogue, you sort of live through that journey, and you understand what Shay is doing and why.
That's really important, I think, because a lot of the questions that we get, as long as the series has been going, we always try to tell people, the Assassins and the Templars are different ideologies. They're not good and evil. Like, it's not a simple, clear-cut thing like that. And yet, I think one of the things that we have a problem with, though, is that, like, people fall into they fall into that norm, right? And they think of it in those terms. So when we presented Rogue to people, a lot of our fans are erupted on Twitter, like they refuse to play this game, right? Like they don't want to do it because they're the enemy. Like the Templars are the evil ones. They're terrible. And even when we did a Twitter Q&A at PAX with Ivan Balaban, the associate producer, or the producer on Rogue, a lot of the questions that we got were, no, but how are you going to convince me that I should be playing this character, right? And having played it, I feel like it's very convincing. But like we said, we're not going to spoil anything.
Yeah, of course, we can't spoil anything. I guess for me, I understand. I understand. I mean, we've always portrayed the Templars as the bad guys, especially when you meet the Borgias in AC2. I mean, they're like very villainous, right? You want to kill these guys because they're doing no good. Of course, in a video game, we always have to have villains, and the Templars, they're all about control. They want to control the population because they don't trust them. whereas the assassins are all about free will, and these are the two sides of the coin. But the thing is, really, both factions want the same thing. They're both working for the good of humanity, and this is something that it's usually hard to explain. I'm always reminded of the comic book The Fall and The Chain, which I'm a big fan of. In those stories, when you follow Orelov, you realize that the assassins are also extremists and unforgiving. I mean, like they if you turn their backs to them, you're a dead man. Their methods are pretty harsh. I mean, they kill people to achieve their own aims. So I feel that both factions are at just different ends of the spectrum, and I don't want to quote Spock, but reality is somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, they're both right and they're both wrong at the same time. But maybe there's other reasons. I know a lot of fans were asking for a Templar creed. Like, they were asking, like, when are we going to be able to play a Templar? In AC3, you get to play Aetham for a while, and that's pretty exciting. But it's only for a little while. So in Rogue, we just like push that experience a little further.
Well, I think that's, you've just hit the nail on the head. There's been, I mean, even someone like myself, I've always thought, I want to see things from the other side. It's like history is always kind of like dictated by the winners kind of thing, but it's like I'd like to see the other side and see for myself whether or not this person's cause was just, in inverted commas, kind of thing. So it's going to be very interesting to see Shay's progression through the game and seeing things from the Templar side.
Well, and that's part of it, right, too? Like, I mean, whenever we've played Assassin's Creed games, it's usually at a point where the assassins, like as a group, are kind of on the ropes, right? Like, they're the underdogs and they're trying to get back together. So when you think about, like, I would like to play a Templar game, surely there must have been times where the Templars were on the ropes, right? Like, they were the ones with their backs against the wall. They were the ones who were, like, really hurting and not doing very well. And maybe the assassins were super powerful. And it's a pretty common theme that, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So if you have a time where, surely there's been several times in the past where the assassins were super big and super corrupt. So do you feel like, even if they're not super big or super corrupt, do you feel like this is kind of the somewhat of the because I feel like with the assassins that Shay faces, they're a more daunting group than traditionally we've seen.
Yeah, but they're not the Borgias, right? They're not that bad. It's just that they are though more powerful than the Templars at the time. Basically, the game starts where basically at the height of Achilles' Brotherhood. So the assassins are sort of in control of North America. This is before Aetham comes to the colonies and gets his crew together and slowly takes control of the continent. So, but the thing, it's with Rogue, it's a bit hard because you can't, and I don't want to spoil anything either. But this is also part of the story, and part of what I felt was interesting about Shay is that once he turns his back to the assassins and decide that he needs to hunt them down, going after them is really hard for them because some of them were actually his friend, like close friends. So what do you do then? Like, it's a really tough decision. So you have to be convinced that you're doing the absolute right thing, because if you're wrong, you're just killing innocents or killing people who have maybe they're just and they're good people. So, but I don't want to go to. You can't really say actually. If you play the game, you'll understand that the assassins are not wholly corrupted. They're not bad people. They're just misguided, if you will. Like at some point, Achilles may have been wrong, and he refuses to see it. And this is where the shit hits the fan.
Oh, sure you can. I mean, but that's also the case, because we use the Borgias as an example, but not all of the Templars we've met have been the Borgias or Warren Vidic, right? Like, he's profoundly evil.
Yes, exactly.
But Hatham is like a confusing character for people because he's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? But he's also a Templar.
And also, when you think about Atham, what's interesting is that somehow Atham refused to kill his son, like he showed mercy to Connor. But, when Connor decided to kill his father, like, he did it. So, you can also argue that maybe, he was weak because he showed mercy. I don't know, like, it's, to me, again, Atham, he's one of the most interesting characters to me because he's all about shades of gray. It's not black and white when you think about him. It's not he's evil or he's good. He's just a fully fledged, fleshed out character, basically.
So building off of that, are there any characters that we could talk about that maybe new or returning characters? I mean, I guess we could. We've spent a good amount of time talking about Shay already, but are there any characters that you'd want to highlight for us going in, so we should know like more information about them?
Well, we already mentioned Achilles. When you start the game, you're a young apprentice, basically, where under his tutelage. So you learn from Achilles and the other assassins. The Brotherhood is very strong at this point, so there are several master assassins in the Brotherhood. You're not one of them yet. You're sort of just learning. Of course, there's also Atham. I know he was in the trailer, so it's not a big thing. Basically, you don't see him for a while, but he's the one welcoming you into the Templar Order. The game starts in 1752. That's 2 years before Atham comes to the colonies. And by the time you meet Atham, he already had put his crew together and went to Europe. These are the events in the novel Forsaken, and you actually meet him when he comes back. Yeah, of course, another returning character is Adewale from Black Flag and Black Flag's DLC. I don't want to spoil anything, but Adewale is part of the game, and he's one of the assassins that Shay will try to track down at some point.
And he's probably, he's got to be getting pretty old, right?
He's about 60 years old. By the time Shay meets him, he's already a legend among the assassins, and he's like probably the most famous assassin of the time, actually.
Oh, one thing I think that might be appropriate right now is just to put to rest the idea that Adewale and Achilles,
they're not related.
Avalyn,
no, yes,
or like, all these people are somehow related.
So at various points in time, both myself and Gabe might have told some people on various social media networks that no, this is not a thing. But now you can hear it from the lead writer for the brand himself, who is going to tell you that none of those characters are related.
No, they're not at all related. And it's funny because at some point when I was working on Rogue, Darby actually poked me. Darby wrote, of course, Black Flag, and he asked me, like, is there any, I don't know if he had read something from a fan or something. I said, no, of course they're not related. Like, we all know this and we all agree. Avalyn is not related either. They all even come from different places. They just happen to be black.
There you go.
So one of the most important characters in the game is Liam. He's basically Shay's best buddy. He's the one who actually brought Shay into the Assassins. He's like a big brother to Shay. He's a couple of years older. He's wiser, more experienced. Shay is really brash at the beginning, and he's questioning like what he's doing, why the Assassins are doing what they're doing. And Liam, because he's your best friend, like he's going to be like one of the targets that you're gonna have to, you know, go after at some point in the game, and it's probably going to be a hard thing for Shay to do. Basically, Liam is the only family that Shay had. They basically lost touch at some point, but when they met up again, this is before the game, Liam was already an assassin training under Achilles, and you know, sometime later he introduced the two, and Achilles welcomed Shay into the Brotherhood.
That's actually pretty important, mainly because like we'd spoken to Susie Patrick, one of the other writers on Rogue, for a dev blog a while back, and she had mentioned the same thing, in that like at various points in Shay's life, he's searching for meaning and for a place to belong. And initially it's the Assassins, and then obviously at some point it's the Templars. So it's sort of like, I feel like for me, one of the best things to explore in Rogue is going to be the connections that Shay has with these people at various points in time. Whether that connection ends up being severed for whatever reason, it's going to be that. And I know from a lot of fans who've told us, especially Hatham, most especially Hatham, because obviously we've seen what Hatham's relationship was like with his own son, so kind of exploring that as. But no, again, Hatham, we talk about him, but he got a great reception when he appeared in the trailer, and that was one of the most pointed to parts of the dev blog we did with Susie, in that she mentions, you know, Hatham learns from Shay, and Shay can learn from Hatham, and exploring that in the game and all of that. It's interesting because I think a lot of people want to just make Shay the son, the son that he
never really had.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly, because of the timeline. Actually, can we just go back to the timeline, because another thing Susie mentioned that you can probably elaborate on a little bit is the timeline in which Rogue is set in, and one of the major events at the time was obviously the 7 Years' War.
Yes.
So could you tell us a little bit just about that? Again, primarily just for people who might not know about that in history, and so it just gives them a bit of a picture of how, you know, Rogue's going to sit in all of that.
So yeah, the game starts just before the war begins. The game starts in 52, and actually it was called the French and Indian War in the colonies. It starts in 1754. And this is really the first global conflict. Like, it was a world war. Like, every European state was at war, and they were fighting in Europe, they were fighting in the colonies, pretty much around the world. For us, it's really interesting because we're basically using that as a backdrop that will pretty much set the stage for the American Revolution that comes later in AC3. And what's interesting, and again, like, people might not know that, but the North America was almost all French. Like, France, you know, controlled most of North America at the time. And it was during that conflict that they actually lost the war, and lost pretty much all of North America to the British. And this is really most of the game takes place during that time period. So there's of course major battles both on, you know, at sea and on land. We can talk about maybe the different environments we have in the game later, but what's interesting about this is that, again, like, because it's a global conflict, it's really important. And again, it's, in terms of history, it sort of sets the table to prepare the colonies to break from England later. And in terms of our story, it actually sets the table for when you start playing AC3. When you start playing as Connor, you understand, like, when you meet Achilles, you know exactly what happened, like, in the years previous. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. And I guess, obviously, it seems like such a rich time period to place the Assassin Templar conflict as well, because I feel like it works extremely well when you have global conflicts, or at least like larger scale conflicts, and then there's both sides fighting a shadowy war behind the scenes and maybe pulling some strings here, there, and everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is, that, of course, when you say the 7 Years' War, it's not as exciting as saying the French Revolution, or it's not a well-known time period, but it is a very important one.
Let's talk about some of the environments that we'll get to see in Rogue, besides being on a ship.
Of course. Well, just since you mentioned the ship, Shay has his own ship, and one of the environments we have is the North Atlantic. So yes, it's naval gameplay, but it's totally different. The environment is basically during winter in the not the Arctic, but in the North Atlantic. So there's going to be ice. You're going to have to maneuver through that. So it's pretty exciting. I know the trailers they're showing a lot of that. We also have New York as a major city. We basically built upon what they had in AC3, but we don't visit New York a lot in AC3. So they expanded the city a little more. They changed it. It's not quite the same time period. There's a couple of decades between the two games. So again, it feels really fresh when you play it. And there's what we call the River Valley, which is basically network of rivers in North America. So the gameplay is more of a hybrid thing. You can be both on land and on your ship while you do the missions. And often what's interesting about this is that you can actually choose your path. Like you can actually walk or take the ship depending on the missions. So it's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I think the River Valley was actually my favorite part so far, right? Like, just because of that, because there's so much to go and explore. Like, I feel like people who really enjoyed AC4 are going to find the River Valley, like, really, really, really fun, just because it's packed with all kinds of, like, both naval and on-land gameplay. So for people who really like the islands, now it seems like there's more of them and they're bigger, right?
Yeah, exactly, because they're not just islands too. They're part of huge stretches of land. Also, I think all the environments are really rich in terms of side content. A bit like Black Flag. Actually, Black Flag was huge for that, and I think this aspect was really liked by the fans. So I think they really push this maybe even further.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about Templar gameplay in our trailers and things like that, but one of the things that has been the most impressive to me is how much that inverts the typical Assassins gameplay. Like, the playing as a Templar and trying to like battle against the Assassins is a very different feeling than what you're used to being an assassin, because you're not just, oh, here's your target, go and kill them. Like, as a Templar, sometimes you're the target, right? Like, then all of these dudes are going to come and kill you. Like, all these people are going to come and attack you. Or sometimes the target is one of your allies or friends, and all these assassins are going to go and kill them. To try, like, you almost never have to deal with that as an assassin, right? And it seems like, and so a lot of things, or for example, like I'm just thinking of the interceptions.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, just the idea of that to me is the funniest thing. It's just like, well, you were an assassin and you know that they communicate by using pigeons, so catch a pigeon.
Exactly.
Right? Like, and see.
You catch a pigeon and then you have to stop the assassin from completing his mission. So you sort of save people instead.
Yeah, one thing that I feel is like really clear and really welcome in my opinion, because the game draws from a bunch of different kinds of atmosphere, right? Like, and so you pick up like hints of Last of the Mohicans, you pick up hints of Gangs of New York. Like, it's really impressive that, given the time that it's set in, the kinds of things that are happening. I feel like it's such a I don't know. I'm probably overselling it right now. But I feel like it's a great blend of AC4 and AC3. Like, it brings some of that like density of like activity and the things like being able to go and do to the AC3 environment, right? So it's like the River Valley is just full of stuff to do and full of different ways to like navigate through this terrain and stuff. And then on top of that, the things that there are for you to do are a little bit skewed from what you're used to, because they're not Assassin's missions, they're Templar missions.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up. That's some great Assassin's Creed Rogue conversation. Thank you very much, Richard, for joining us and giving us more insight on the game. As we always do, we're going to ask you where people can find you on the internet, if you have any social media presence that you want to plug. If not, that's fine.
Not really.
Gabe is smiling because once again, he's like, this is good for me.
That's 3 in a row.
3 in a row.
3 in a row we've got.
What does that mean? Why is it good for him?
Oh, he doesn't have to worry about what you might say on Twitter, for instance.
Oh, yeah, no.
We don't have to worry about you being targeted by curious fans.
The thing is, I think it's awesome. Like when I get to meet fans and I talk about the franchise and of course their passion for it. I mean, this is always strikes me as, you know, we have so many good and loyal fans, and it's always fun to talk about, you know, just to hear their comments, but also, you know, talk about what they would want to see, what they dream about when, you know, when they think about, you know, what's going to be the next installment of Assassin's Creed. They have amazing ideas. It's always fun, but no, I'm not on Twitter, mostly because I work a lot. I'm in a band. I don't have much time. So yeah. so tell them to contact Gabe.
Yes.
Do you want to plug your band though?
Well,
because I bet people would be curious to hear your band.
Well, yeah, sure. It's my band. The thing is, we're a Montreal band. We have 2 projects. It's a Black Russian band, and Joshua too. We have it's basically the first one is a cover band, mostly playing songs from the 80s up to today, at corporate shows, bars, weddings, things like that, private parties. And Joshua 2 is actually a tribute to U2.
There will be links in the description.
There will be links, exactly.
There will be links in the video description to Richard's band.
Excellent.
There you go. Okay, so well, he's not on Twitter. You can check out the bands. You can find Gabe and Assassin's Creed on social media. So you tell us where.
I'm UbiGabe on everything except Instagram, where I'm ComDevGabe. Yeah, Instagram. Anyways. It's, you know what though, I never post anything because I usually post from we post all of our stuff from the Assassin's Creed channel. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so that's probably the best place to reach me. And then of course for Assassin's Creed in general, we have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Assassin's Creed. We got twitter.com/Assassin's Creed for Twitter. Instagram is Instagram.com/Assassin's Creed. It's Tumblr, I think, is the one weird one where it's assassinscreed.tumblr.com. Yeah, because it's backwards on Tumblr. It's also backwards on DeviantArt, but I don't know that we have a DeviantArt page.
I think we have a dedicated. We do have G+, but because that doesn't have a specific vanity link.
We still don't have the vanity link. I'm gonna go back to my desk and like try and get it. That's for the rest of the day. That's what I'm doing today.
That's your goal.
I have nothing else to do. You know, there's no game to launch or anything like that. No plans that need to be made. I'll just go and get that vanity link and call it a day.
Gabe working hard for the community. And
as always.
And obviously you can find Initiates on Twitter and on YouTube. So it's twitter.com/ACinitiates, all one word. It's the same with YouTube, so it's youtube.com/ACinitiates. We have an Instagram as well, which is instagram.com/ACinitiates. Personally, I'm at EscoBlades on pretty much everything. Nobody squatted my name on Instagram like Gabe's. So... And with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you for listening again. We always appreciate you listening in. And let us know in the comments how you enjoyed the episode. So till next time, stay safe, Assassins.